Hello and welcome to the Presidency Mini Unit. If we were in class, I would have vanilla ice cream and chocolate ice cream in front, and I would actually offer it up to you guys. And I would say, whichever group, the chocolate people or the vanilla people, whoever gets more votes, that group gets to actually have their preferred ice cream. Usually, it's actually chocolate who wins, and the chocolate people get so excited they're going to eat their ice cream. And then I vote in a different way, not exactly the normal way. And vanilla ends up winning, and the chocolate people are pissed. So, we're going to talk today about the difference between popular vote, that is, sort of the number of people voting, and the electoral college math, which is actually the way that we elect our president. So, please note that we don't have a daily question today, but at the end, there's going to be some sort of were you listening questions that you're going to need to fill out in order to get your attendance checked in. Now, back in 2016, when Hillary Clinton was running against Donald Trump, 138 million people voted, but no one ever paid attention to that number. That's just the popular vote. You think, well, doesn't that number matter? No, actually, the magic number is 270. So if you look at this map and you added up all of the numbers on this map, they add up to 538. And if you divide 538 by 2, you get 269. But since 269 and 269 would be a tie, you care about 270. So 270 is actually the magic number when it comes to being elected president, not getting a majority of 138 million people. So to sort of put this all in a context, I'm going to take you to a third grade classroom where they're having a vote on what's better, markers or colored pencils. Okay, so here we go. We got to get ourselves there. Right.
Do you know where I can find?
Here.
I ask you to choose between two candidates, colored pencils and markers. Who is voting for colored pencils? Okay. 10 votes for colored pencils. Who is voting for markers? 14 for markers. Markers have won the popular vote. And now we're going to have the real election. Naturally, they were disappointed. They thought we just had the election. But now it was time to warp these young minds by introducing them to the Electoral College. So we broke the class into 5 tables or states. The majority at each table, either markers or colored pencils, would get the table's one electoral vote. Of course, in real life, states have varying amounts of electoral votes, depending on the population. Table 1's elector, how do you cast your vote?
Markers.
Table 2's elector, how do you cast your vote?
Markers.
Table 3's elector.
Colored pencils.
In the end, the whole election came down to one state. Table 5's elector. Angel, come on down. This is it, guys. This will decide the whole thing. Elector, how do you cast your vote?
Colored pencils.
What's that?
You're still cheating. Everybody should think it's unfair because it's not just about the elector's vote. It's about everybody's vote.
Oh, Aubrey, you are a rabble-rouser. I mean, clearly you're trying to whip them up into a frenzy.
It has to be fair.
I love that kid. He comes running up. He's like, it's not fair. And that's the reality. It's like all those chocolate people who said, it's not fair. I had more votes. Vanilla should have won. So if you look at the popular vote, markers actually beat colored pencils by 14 to 10. But then they actually manipulated it, okay? So that if you look, they had the 24 kids divided up into 5 tables. 4 of the tables had 5 people at it. 1 table had 4. So if you organize it the right way, you could actually get a win for colored pencils because they got 3 votes to 2 votes. And you say, like, what kind of math is this? This doesn't make any sense. How can the minority beat the majority? Well, that's the system we have for our presidency. And believe it or not, recently in 2016, as well as in 2000, we saw this happen. Okay, so I'm going to play the first like 2.5 minutes of this video. It's a little cheesy, but I think it does a nice job. Okay, sets the tone.
Most people have heard of the Electoral College during presidential election years. But what exactly is the Electoral College? Simply said, it is a group of people appointed by each state who formally elect the president and vice president of the United States. To understand how this process began and how it continues today, we can look at the Constitution of the United States. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the Constitution. It specifies how many electors each state is entitled to have. Since 1964, there have been 538 electors in each presidential election. How did they decide on the number 538? Well, the number of electors is equal to the total voting membership of the United States Congress, 435 representatives plus 100 senators and 3 electors from the District of Columbia. Essentially, the Democratic candidate and Republican candidate are each trying to add up the electors in every state so that they surpass 270 electoral votes, or just over half of 538 votes, and win the presidency. So how do states even get electoral votes? Each state receives a particular number of electors based on population size. The census is conducted every 10 years, so every time the census happens, states might gain or lose a few electoral votes.
You guys know
Let's say
about
you're a
that.
voter in California, a state with 55 electoral votes. If your candidate wins in California, they get all 55 of the state's electoral votes.
So that's important. We got to realize that California is the biggest. It's got 55. And if you win California, that means if you get more popular votes in California, you get all of their electoral college votes. It's not proportional. You don't get like 30 and the other person gets like 25. You get all 55. So we're going to take some notes on this. Our electoral college math on page 1. So the electoral college system is something that we call a winner take all system. It's a really important 3-word phrase that we know, winner take all. So what that means is, like when Hillary won Illinois, she got all 20 of our electoral votes and Trump got 0. Certainly Trump got millions of people in Illinois who voted for him, but he didn't get enough to get the majority, and therefore he got 0 and Hillary got all 20. So whether Hillary won in the popular vote by 1 vote or almost 1 million votes, she got all 20 electoral votes. It's really important to recognize. Whether you win by 1,000 or you win by 1 million, whoever gets more of the popular vote gets all the electoral votes. And because of this, candidates spend almost all their time in swing states. These are the competitive states where there's a pretty much even mix of Democrats and Republicans, where they have a chance. And they spend very little time in safe states, where one party is represented in much greater numbers than the other. So, for example, Hillary Clinton is from Illinois. I don't know if you guys know that. She was born here and raised here until 18. But it made very little sense for her to come here and try to convince Democrats who are already going to vote for her to vote for her because she already sort of had it won. And even though Trump has a presence here, certainly Trump Tower, it made very little sense for him to come here because there just aren't enough Republicans in Illinois to actually swing the state that way. So I say winner take all with little asterisks because Maine and Nebraska actually have a slightly different system. We don't have to worry about that. So if you're a presidential candidate, it doesn't make much sense for you to spend time and money in safe states because there's really no added value, and there's a typo here, I guess, in trying to get votes in a state that you've already won or already lost based on the disproportionate number of Democrats or Republicans there. Like we can safely say right now that the Democrat is going to win Illinois. So if that's Joe Biden, there's no reason for Joe Biden to come here. Okay, he's already won it. Spend your money and your time elsewhere. Just as there's very little incentive for Donald Trump to come here. Okay, because there's just not enough Republicans. So candidates spend their time in swing states like Ohio and Florida and Missouri and Pennsylvania and Nevada. They don't spend their time in California, which is going to go for the Democrats, or Mississippi, which is going to go for the Republicans. Now, here's the math we need to know, okay? Every state, no matter how big or how small, starts with 3 electoral college votes because every state, North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Vermont, they all have 2 senators and 1 representative. Those are our smallest states. So everybody starts with 3, okay? Illinois, at least for the time being until the census goes through, has 18 representatives and 2 senators. So we have 2 electoral college votes. Again, California is the biggest. They have 53 representatives and 2 senators to get to 55. Now, the total number of electoral college votes, as I said before, is 538. 435 House members, 100 senators, and 3 from Washington, D.C. So you get to 538. You divide it by 2, you get to 269, but that would make it a tie. So you try to get 270. So throughout the rest of this year, obviously 19 is seemingly the number that people are talking about with COVID-19 right now. But as we talk about what's likely going to be Biden versus Trump, it's about 270, 270, 270, 270. Who can get the electoral college votes? Now, many people have problems with this system, okay? But there are some advantages. So on the next page, we're going to write down advantages of the current system. First is that you can't just focus on the biggest cities. So in theory, a candidate could just win support in all the biggest cities in the United States if it was a popular vote, and they could probably win just by going to New York and Chicago and Miami and LA and Houston and Dallas. You could get pretty close to having enough of a majority, okay? So this makes it so that you have to actually travel to rural areas and suburban areas. The second is it avoids what we call a regional president. So in theory, if you just look at the population of like the East Coast and the West Coast, you might be able to get a majority of the United States right there. If you just went down from Seattle all the way to San Diego, and you went from New York and Boston all the way down to Miami, if you just had the coasts, you might be able to get yourself elected. So it avoids a regional president. You have to campaign all around the country. So the moral of this story is you can't just go to, the coasts or certain regions. You can't just go to the big cities. You actually have to go around and campaign. That's the whole point of it. Okay, that's the advantage. So, the disadvantages. One is, as we have certainly seen, Hillary Clinton is an example in 2016, Al Gore is an example in 2000. You could be the winner of the popular vote and lose in the Electoral College, or, as we saw with George W. Bush and Donald Trump, you could actually lose the popular vote. Fewer people in the United States could vote for you compared to your candidate. You could still be elected president. We actually call that a minority president, even though it doesn't really refer to racial or sexual minorities. Okay. Now, secondly, it decreases voter turnout. Because if you're a Republican in a blue state, like a Republican in Illinois, why would you vote? And if you're a Democrat in a red state, like in Mississippi, why would you vote? Because you're pretty correct. Your vote won't make a difference. In the blue states know that they're going to go for that Democratic candidate. And the red states know they're going to go for the Republican candidate. So people just get pissed off and they're like, well, I'm not even going to vote because my vote doesn't matter, at least in the presidential race. So we have that whole situation where you could actually lose but win, and it ultimately lowers voter turnout, which we already know is a problem in the United States. Okay? So people like Elizabeth Warren, who we know dropped out of the race, but she was one of the people that was really against the Electoral College. And one of the reasons, at least as far as this political cartoon says, is get rid of the Electoral College because the Democrats have basically been screwed by the Electoral College in 2 of the more recent presidential elections. But there are efforts underway to actually get rid of the Electoral College, if not actually getting rid of it, sort of working around it. So we're going to go to the next page, and we're going to look at something that is called the NPVIC. And it actually refers to this map. So if you look at this map right here, the green states, of which Illinois is one, they have signed something called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. It's a terribly long name, and it's sort of confusing. And I'm going to do my best to explain it to you, okay? So the NPVIC is an effort to avoid the Electoral College without actually getting rid of it, because the NPVIC is trying to actually to not have to pass and ratify a constitutional amendment to abolish electoral college. If you wanted to abolish electoral college, you would actually need to add an amendment to the Constitution, since it's in the Constitution. So this is something that is trying to work sort of within the current framework without getting rid of something in the Constitution, because it's really hard to get an amendment. We've only had 27 in our entire history. Okay, so here's how it works. Okay, so we're going to write this down, and then I'm going to try to explain it. So states pledge, if they're part of this NPVIC, to give all of their electors to whomever wins the popular vote. Okay, so remember, Illinois has 20 electoral votes. So for example, if Hillary won the popular vote, that is, if more people across America voted for her than Trump, which, believe it or not, did happen in 2016, then every state that is in the NPVIC would give their electoral votes to Hillary, no matter whether she won their state or not. Okay, I know that's a little confusing, because right now, under a winner-take-all system, whoever wins that state gets all of the electoral college votes. Okay, so like Mississippi, Trump won Mississippi, so he got all their electoral college votes. Well, if Mississippi was part of the NPVIC, then that means that they would instead give their electoral college votes to Hillary, because she actually won more people. Okay, so in order for this to work, you need to have enough states that make up 270 electoral college votes. Because if you've got 270, then they can basically decide, well, we're going to give the 270 to whoever won more popular votes, and that person would again have the constitutional number of electoral college votes and would win. Okay, right now, as of today, 15 states in DC, Illinois being one of them, have joined, and they have 196 electoral college votes between them. So again, they would need 74 more electoral college votes from states in order to put this into play. There are many people who think this would never happen, but actually this has gotten momentum recently. Okay, so I'm going to give you one more example of how this would work, okay, to make this NPVIC a little more clear, hopefully. Okay, here's the scenario. Okay, let's say that the NPVIC was in effect, which I told you it's not yet because it doesn't have 270, but let's say that states with 270 electoral college votes joined. Okay, so in the 2020 election, if Trump gets more votes across the United States than Biden, okay, that means if he wins the popular vote, then Illinois, which we know is going to go to Biden over Trump, would give all 20 of electoral college votes to Trump. That would mean that even though Biden won Illinois, okay, it ordinarily would get all 20, those would go to Trump. So it's a way of working within the constitutional system, but sort of bypassing a certain part. Okay, so I know that's a little confusing. Okay, hopefully we can, if you have any questions, you can certainly ask me. Okay, so there's no daily question today. Instead, it's a have you been listening check, and we're going to run that through Ed Puzzle. So if you need to go back and look over the stuff in order to answer the questions, you can certainly do that. All right, guys, hope you have a great weekend. I will see you on Monday with another video on the presidency.